All right, welcome everyone. This is Matt Snodgrass. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Marketing Profs, and I wanted to welcome you all to today's webinar. Before we get started, I'd like to take a minute to thank Hustle for sponsoring today's broadcast. Hustle is a one-to-one texting platform that lets businesses connect personally through the most effective communication channel. Hustle enables businesses to use conversations to build relationships, to boost the effectiveness of other communication channels, and to drive real action at scale. Today's webinar is The Marketing Channel You've Been Missing, and our presenters are Adam Daigian and Abhi Sivisailam. Adam is the VP of Growth at Hustle, leading multiple functions including growth marketing, product marketing, branding, public relations, and business operations. He's designed and optimized hundreds of growth initiatives, sales funnels, and acquisition channels. Abhi is the Director of Growth and Analytics at Infusionsoft, and as a data scientist, analyst, and strategist, his specialty is helping companies leverage their data to make better decisions. Adam and Abhi, please take it away.
Thanks very much, Matt, and we're very excited to be here. As Matt mentioned, I'm actually the VP of Growth and Revenue Operations at Hustle. We are a Series B peer-to-peer texting platform, and our venture portfolio includes Insight Ventures, Google Ventures, and Salesforce Ventures. Abhi, do you want to do a quick introduction? And then we'll be kicking things off with a poll, as we'd love to get a sense from you all in the audience. What does your marketing mix look like right now? How are you feeling about your channels? And are you leveraging SMS?
Sure. My name is Abhi Sivisailam. As mentioned earlier, I run growth and analytics at a company called Infusionsoft. Infusionsoft is sales and marketing automation and business management for small businesses. We've been doing this for 12 plus years, and we're just recognized today by G2 Crowd as the #1 software for small businesses in the CRM space. Outside of that, I also work on growth for Hustle and a variety of other companies.
Great, thanks, Abhi. So it looks like we already have some data coming in here, and it says pretty much what I would expect it to say, which is that we have a lot of great marketers in the audience, and we're all looking for ways to improve the channels that we rely on, the channels that we've been building probably from the ground up that are driving customer acquisition. So I can see here we have about 65% of people saying, my channels perform okay, but they could be better, right? There's always room for improvement. 24% are saying, I need to reboot some of my channels. I have a lot of work to do here. And a relatively small portion, just under 4%, are saying I couldn't be happier with my performance. For those people in the audience, please feel free to send me your resumes. Great information here. We'll move on to the next poll. Great. So with this poll, we just want to get a sense of who's already using SMS in some capacity, either in a sales funnel or marketing funnel, or even in a customer retention funnel. Cool. And it looks like we're trending around 34% versus 65%, and this is pretty typical with what we see across the industry, across marketers and sales organizations. And the way that I typically read this is people are saying, hey, I'm testing this channel. I'm not fully invested yet, or I simply haven't experimented with this channel at all, and I'm looking to get into it, and that's why I'm here, because I want to learn more about how to best leverage it. And what we're here to do, essentially make an argument around, is that SMS will be the next broad outreach channel for various funnels. And we'll talk a little bit about why we think that's the case and give you some tangible examples. And then we'll do some Q&A at the end. Here at Hustle, what we believe and observe is that the way people communicate and form relationships has just fundamentally changed in the last decade. And what we mean by that explicitly is that as mobile devices and different forms of web applications have proliferated, the way that people are communicating is just fundamentally shifted in the last 10 years. And there's a stat that we like to throw around quite often, and that essentially is in 2006, in 1 month, just the United States, 38 million text messages were sent. Now, 10 years later, 2016, 1 month in the United States, 780 billion text messages were sent. And you can see from this slide here that 80 billion messages are sent in between individuals on a daily basis, right? So there's an incredible amount of volume going through various forms of messaging services, whether that be text or app-to-app messaging services like iMessages or WhatsApp, or even collaboration tools like Slack, right? And the challenge for businesses here is that in this relatively short period of time, people have truly changed the way they communicate, but businesses are still leveraging things like mobile apps and social media, landing pages, and phone and email to try and communicate with prospects and customers, right? And as you can see from the poll we ran first, we're starting to experience more and more challenges there. So if we look at some of these stats here, what consumers are essentially saying is that more than half of people are just legitimately saying that messaging is my preferred form of communication. Almost 70% of people are saying they want to message with businesses more in the next 2 years. And 90% of people say they want to have two-way communication with businesses over messaging. But what I'm willing to bet, and I think that shows from our poll earlier, is that for the vast majority of businesses out there, for the vast majority of marketers, we simply aren't leveraging this channel, in a fully fledged way, right? And if we are experimenting in this space, typically it's looking like a website chat, which I think is a great start. And what we see, very frequently with the customers that we're working with is that this is a great way to sort of dip your toe into conversational marketing. But as soon as somebody leaves your website, you're back into phone and email, right? And for all the people that don't visit your website, well, you're still trying to reach them over phone and email, right? So we're still running into some of the same challenges that you're all pointing out in the first poll that we ran. So what we're seeing and what we're really leaning into is that the best marketers out there are really leaning into the power of conversations. And there's a couple of reasons why that I think are sort of fundamental if you sort of think about the way that you communicate with your friends and your family and how that might apply to business communications. And that's essentially that messaging is ongoing and it's personal. So it's two ways, right? It's bi-directional and it's always open. And you have these open engagement windows that never really close, right? Because you have a thread that just frankly exists in perpetuity. Additionally, what we've seen is that messaging has a capacity to build stronger relationships. People are simply willing to say things over message that they wouldn't be willing to say over email and phone, because there's sort of there's a little bit less formality there, and people are actually willing to open up. And then last but not least, and this is where SMS or messaging really has a capability to level up our marketing platforms across the board, is that what we see our customers doing frequently is layering SMS on top of other marketing channels like social, direct mail, email, etc. And it's actually showing significant amplification over your existing channels. So we're not at all suggesting that you should rip out all the work that you've done in your email programs and your social and your paid advertising. We're simply suggesting that this is an amazing channel to introduce into your marketing mix, and it allows you to essentially level up your entire marketing platform and simply level up the way that you communicate with prospects and customers. So it's certainly not exclusive just to the acquisition channel. Now, before we go any further here, I want to talk a little bit about the sort of different forms that SMS takes when it comes to business communications. And I think there's a couple important distinctions here. One of the first ones we want to talk about is inbound SMS. And those are typically reserved for support inquiries, requests for information. Typically, what you see there are sort of like ticketing systems, are highly manual, sometimes are bot driven. They're good for ad hoc requests. And again, they're typically, this sort of form of inbound SMS is typically reserved for support use cases. And there's outbound blasts, right? And these are batch sent one-to-many text messages. And I think the best way to think about this simply is about translating email marketing over to SMS. And there's a couple of unique requirements here. One is that you should have double opt-ins. Two is that it's better for one-way communication, that's notifications, typically, or offers. And what we simply see, across the market and from our customers that leverage both blast and personalized outbound, is that the results are just very different, and that the tools that facilitate blast SMS simply aren't designed to facilitate a lot of conversations. And then arguably the most unique service available for SMS as a channel is personalized outbound, or what we call peer-to-peer texting. And peer-to-peer texting is very unique in that in order to run peer-to-peer texting campaigns, which allows you to do outbound without explicit opt-ins, is that each text message has to be sent by a human. However, if you take Hustle, for instance, what we essentially have is a messaging platform that allows you to send hundreds of messages a minute and certainly thousands of messages within an hour. And then you have a platform that's explicitly designed to facilitate conversations, so messaging threads back and forth as quickly as possible. And what we essentially suggest here is that this form of SMS communication is best reserved for high-value asks or conversion moments, and works best if you're really focused on building relationships with your target audience, whether, again, they be prospects or customers. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Abhi, who has a ton of experience leveraging SMS in various channels. And he's going to talk a little bit about how to use this messaging, how to use this channel to drive results through an end-to-end client lifecycle funnel.
Thanks, Adam. So what we're really seeing here, we're looking at the full life cycle of most B2B companies and many B2C companies, starting with activation all the way ending up with customer retention. And what we're really seeing here, and the important point to drive home, is texting is a channel unto itself. Right? It's comparable to email, to phone, chat, direct mail, carrier pigeon. It's comparable and analogous to every other channel that we as marketers experiment with. And that means that texting should feature in the strategy for every touch point that marketers own or influence, which includes these four key lifecycle stages. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk through a couple of examples, specifically from Infusionsoft and one from Hustle, and really try and drive that point home. So let's start at the activation stage. So Infusionsoft is a B2B company targeting small businesses. For us, we have two entry points into our funnel. We have a free trial, and we have a traditional demo flow. For us, the activation stage is really facilitating entry into that funnel. And so what that looks like for us is a lot of different things on the SMS front, but the most compelling has been cold lead activation. So, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later in the Hustle context as well. So for us, historically, we've been collecting these leads, whether they were trial signups that never bridged this activity chasm, they never really engaged, or what we would call looky-loos, or demo folks that signed up for a demo, but then ultimately ended up being no-shows, or signed up for collateral, but then we're never really engaged after that. And so what we started to do after many years of experimenting with email is cold lead mass blast via SMS. The sales team would sit down, divvy up leads, and each of them would mass blast a set of leads from this cold lead queue. And what ended up happening was 50% more uptake, right? So we had years of experience with email, years of trying to activate this cold lead population, and SMS was 50% more effective, and led to meaningful conversations on the funnel. And I think we've seen that same kind of experience at Hustle as well, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Going further down the funnel, engage for us looks like a few different things, and we've found SMS to be really valuable in two specific contexts. One is when people sign up, we text them. As soon as people sign up in either funnel, if they're coming in through a demo funnel especially, we target them with a text message from their dedicated product concierge, and start the conversation. And what we find is, the results initially were mixed, but what we found was that the results are most meaningful for certain subsets of the population. So when we looked as a whole, the results weren't as compelling. But when we looked at, say, mobile channels, the results were very compelling. And, this really speaks to the effectiveness of SMS for certain populations. And going back to first principles, or why SMS works in the first place, for us, the most effective subsegment was free trialers that came in on mobile. These folks that came in on mobile, perhaps were on the go. They didn't really know what they were signing up for. If we were to target them with an email, it would have been too late. So we were able to capture them in an asynchronous way while they were on the go, in a way that facilitated their lifestyle, in a way that facilitated the context that they were engaging with us in the first place, and really hit them with the right messages at the right time. So that's a testament to not just that SMS can work, but SMS needs to be structured in the right way. It's not a panacea. And for us, it's diving deeper into the results and not being discouraged by initial failures. We were able to find the green shoots here, and the green shoots here were one specific promising segment, and we were able to double down. On the engage side, we've also been able to target one of our most important metrics that was most actionable for us, which is our no-show rate. Our no-show rate was approaching 50% in early 2018 and late 2017. And we were able to increase that number through a variety of initiatives quite meaningfully. But texting reminders, engaging the account executive to text the sales prospect, the sales opportunity right before the appointment and throughout the appointment scheduling process had around a 10% lift in our sit rate. That's persisted through a variety of initiatives as well. Jumping right through the funnel, on the convert side, the most important thing for us from an SMS perspective on the convert side is our free trial channel. So free trial is a very common go-to-market strategy these days. And in terms of engaging folks in the free trial, getting them the help they needed, and making sure they were continuing to engage, we were running into the problem that I think a lot of us found in running these kind of trial programs, and a lot of us are seeing based on the poll results, which is that other channels are fatigued or they don't work. SMS did work, and SMS did work because it's not a fatigue channel, unlike email, which goes to spam or suffers from email blindness at this point. It's asynchronous, unlike phone, so people can communicate to us on the go, and it's conversational, unlike push notifications. And so what we were able to find is we found success assigning a customer success coach to every free trialer, and created alerts, within our CRM that produced warning signals essentially for flagging engagement. And we're able to drive the customer success coach to proactively engage with free trialers in this way that wasn't fatigued, that was asynchronous and conversational. And we're able to increase conversion rate by 10%. Going further down the funnel, retain is an area that we haven't really experimented with much. We see retain as an area that has a lot of potential for us because it's very similar to convert. It will work for the same reasons that convert worked for, which is not fatigued, asynchronous, and conversational. And the dynamics work similarly to how convert works as well, which is we see flagging activity, we see flagging engagement, and we proactively intervene. So retain for us has not been something that we've invested in. It's something that we plan on investing in Q1. It'll feature into our strategy, and we'll take measured steps. Okay, let's carry on to a Hustle case as well. So just to drive this point further home, we also have a case study from Hustle. Hustle actually had a similar cold lead jumpstart campaign to the one that we referenced earlier at Infusionsoft. So in this case, this was designed as something of a test. They had inactive leads with no activity in 30 days. These people had engaged in some capacity, with our funnel, primarily with content. And we created, a nice pseudo experiment here where we had, some traditional channels, email and phone campaigns, and layered in SMS in parallel. And what we found was 26 times more pipeline generated with Hustle, and 12 times faster than phone calling. Very dramatic results, very similar to what we've seen in other companies. But most importantly, the conversations were A, compelling, B, compelling because for us especially, it was performative and actually demonstrated our value proposition. But C, we were able to get more context out of these conversations because it was conversational, because it was asynchronous, because it engaged people on their terms, at their timeline. We were able to get more out of these conversations and get more learnings and insights than certainly we were able to by email, and in a way that we wouldn't have been able to by phone in the first place, because we wouldn't have been able to connect. And with that, Adam, I'll turn it back to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Abhi. Really appreciate that deep dive into how Infusionsoft is using SMS and how other companies can use SMS in an inside sales funnel. Now I'm going to move things along pretty quickly here since we're running short of time, and I want to make sure that we leave a bit of time for Q&A. I just want to call out some of Hustle's customers, one of which is Live Nation, and what we've seen with Live Nation is that fans are typically what we call high value or high LTV customers. And in the case of Live Nation, Colin was able to reach somebody who actually wanted to buy a season tickets package, and they simply weren't able to get this person on the phone. And SMS was able to cut through that noise and actually connect with a customer that actually wanted to purchase. And these other channels that fatigued, right, where there's simply too much noise, they weren't effective anymore. If you look at Kansas University, what we're seeing there is significant increase in contact rate when using Hustle for basically collecting donations from both from alumni, and then one of our marquee customers, Sierra Club, uses Hustle for a number of initiatives, engaging volunteers, fundraising, and in sending events as well, and in sending hundreds of thousands of text messages on a quarterly basis, nearly 1 million. They're maintaining a 28% engagement rate. So what I'd love everybody in the audience to think about here is if I were to send 600,000 emails, would I expect a 28% click-through rate or 28% engagement rate? And then so just a couple tangible examples of how our customers are using Hustle. And one of the questions that we want to pose to the audience is essentially how many conversations are you having with your audience this week? How many conversations are you having with your prospects, with your customers? And in the conversations that you are having with them, how engaging are they really? And how's the sort of the channel that they're occurring over? What's the experience like for your prospects and your customers? And so without further ado, I want to jump into the Q&A, and we have one question here already, and please don't be shy. Feel free to submit more questions. And the question is, what are your recommendations for using SMS for events marketing? And what's the best way to build text marketing lists? Is there a sign-up page, an email, a box on the website? So I'll actually work backwards. And I think first and foremost, one consideration is that when we talk to customers and prospects, they typically have more mobile numbers than they realize. So I'm not sure about everybody on the line here, but I personally do not have a landline. So anytime I submit my number, it's my phone, my mobile phone. And so one of the things that Hustle offers, and I highly recommend, is to take your existing list and run them through a mobile device, basically checks and see what percentage of your current phone list are essentially mobile devices. So that's first and foremost. Second is that we always suggest that in your registration forms, you actually explicitly ask for mobile phone and not like work phone, or simply phone. And generally speaking, we strongly suggest that you really drive phone number acquisition as much as you would email, because phone is sort of an important. Many people have a single phone number, right, instead of like multiple email addresses, and it's sort of an important identity component of a prospect. Now, getting to the events marketing channel, SMS is a great channel to use for events, and one of the reasons why is that, for one, events are typically high value offers, which makes them sort of a prime offer to use SMS to give to like a certain set of prospects or customers. Additionally, a lot of events campaigns look like a pre-event, a during the event, and a post-event communication. And if you can actually centralize it over a single thread and a single channel, SMS ends up being an excellent opportunity for marketing your events to your customers, right? So a significant portion of our customers are using Hustle for events or using SMS for events. And it's a great way to dip your toe into using SMS as a channel. Why do you not need the double opt-in for personalized outbound? Great question. So Hustle essentially is what's called peer-to-peer texting, right? And basically, when you're running peer-to-peer texting, and again, the definition behind peer-to-peer texting is that the text message itself is sent by a human being. It's simply not subject to the same rules and regulations that automated communications are, whether it's automated communications via email blast, SMS blast, or even like phone banking and robodialing. And so we'd be happy to go into more detail there, but essentially peer-to-peer texting simply doesn't fall under the regulations of TCPA compliance, GDPR, et cetera. And so what you're essentially able to do with peer-to-peer texting is reach out to prospects or customers with whom you have a pre-existing relationship. And pre-existing relationship is a pretty widely defined legal term, including submission of interest within the last 18 months, purchase within the last 18 months, et cetera. So when you look at your contact database, you'll probably find that you have quite a few pre-existing relationships, maybe more than you expect. Okay, it looks like we are running, looks like we may have time for one more question. What happens if you have a list of phone numbers but no way to determine which are cell and which are land numbers? Excellent question. Is Hustle Flow an option? The question is yes. There are a bunch of services out there. I'm sort of blanking off the top of my head, but if you do a list for basically mobile phone checks, there are quite a few services out there where you can upload a list, and they will basically tell you what percentage of those numbers are.
There's one called Text Magic and also Phone Validator.
Yep. Okay. Cool. All right. Well, I think that. That concludes today's webinar. Obviously, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us directly, or obviously feel free, if you have any questions about Hustle, to get in touch with us there. And we appreciate your time and your questions.
All right. Thanks again, Adam and Abhi. We appreciate all that great information. We did have a couple other questions that came in, but unfortunately, we just don't have time to get to them in the Q&A. So, as we said, you can reach out to Hustle directly to answer any questions that you have. I really hope you all enjoyed today's webinar. You may have seen a survey pop up a few minutes ago. If you could just do us a quick favor and fill that out, your feedback is greatly appreciated. If you haven't had a chance to do that yet, it'll just take you a minute or two. And thanks again to everyone for joining us. We hope to see you again very soon. Have a great day.